I'm WFAE's David Borax, and this is R&D in the QC. Tariq, Bokhari, and Larken Egleston, one Republican and one Democrat, who bonded as first-term Charlotte City Council members. Somehow, they both got reelected, and now we're stuck listening to another season of this amateur hour bullshit. In the first 82 episodes, they talked to a governor, a senator, presidential candidates, and even a journalist or two. Their goal again this season, bringing Charlotte listeners behind the scenes of the City Council in one of America's fastest-growing cities. I won't be listening, but for some reason you are.
It's episode 98 of R&D in the QC, and we'll discuss small business relief, rezonings, task forces, and reopen NC. Episode 98. Larken, how are you, my friend?
I'm well, sir. How are you?
Well, I've been missing my sidekick. I mean, is that something? Is that a
You
thing?
don't have a sidekick, so
I don't right now.
unless you
That's
mean
right.
Chase
You are correct. I do not have a sidekick right now.
or ever.
Well, that's debatable. What's going on?
I wouldn't be the
Good.
sidekick of someone who has a shock jock mic and wears a flat-billed cap while doing live streams.
I wear.
I like the hat. Don't get me wrong, but the flat bill, I feel like you're trying a little too hard.
Listen, I have a whole bunch of hats that I'm prepared to wear and break out during this quarantine time. Also, I've got my
Do they
shock
all-
jock mic, the golden microphone, as we refer to it, in the Excellence in Podcasting Network.
Is that a reference to the John Oliver jokes about Rush Limbaugh this past week?
Or that's just Rush Limbaugh's mantra. I think he existed a little before John Oliver.
Yeah, but no one cared about Rush Limbaugh until John Oliver started making fun of him.
I think that might be debatable, but whatever. This is a get-together, touchy-feely, right and left side of the aisle combined podcast. This is not about
Limbaugh.
What do you, by the way, before we start, how's your life over there? You've been helping people out on the side of giving them something to focus in on, remembering all those bars and restaurants that we've lost. You know, there's a weird parallel there, which is like, you may be doing this again in 5 years. Think about how many bars and restaurants that we don't even realize we're about to lose are going under every day right now.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's been some national predictions, and I would imagine that North Carolina or Charlotte would potentially mirror those somewhat closely, that we could lose like a third of our restaurants. And so think about, your 15 favorite places that you like to go eat in Charlotte, and think about 5 of those not being there for you in a couple of months. And more importantly than just the selfishness of hating to lose the places that you enjoy patronizing, imagine all the owners and the managers and the bartenders and the servers that you love that work there, that rely on that job to put food on their table, and that job not being there for them. So it is scary, and I hope that people are doing everything they can right now, whether it's ordering takeout. A lot of the cocktail establishments are doing these creative cocktail kits where they'll bring you, or you can pick up everything but the booze, and they'll have all of the herbs and the syrups and the bitters and the tinctures and the whatever else with a recipe card in there. And so there's people being creative, and I love the creativity and the nimbleness of a lot of these businesses, but none of them are making anything close to what they're accustomed to making, and it's starting to hurt them. And we'll talk a little more about that. You mentioned Nikki Wolf, who's the head of Yelp in Charlotte. She and I have been doing, we just finished up the most missed bar tournament, kind of NCAA style tournament with a 64-team bracket. Dixie's Tavern was named the most missed bar in Charlotte by the people. There's got to be a party whenever parties are allowed again.
Awesome spot that was, man. I have so many good memories. So many good Dixie's memories.
For the newbies, that's where the Google Fiber office is now on 7th Street.
You can still go party there.
And we're in the midst of, and people can find it on my Twitter or Facebook, or Nikki Wolf's Twitter or Facebook. We are in round 2 of most missed restaurants. And my personal favorite, Coffee Cup, is still in the mix. They had a tight contest in round 1, but they made it through. So I hope people will go vote for that. They've got until, I think, 6 p.m. tomorrow, which is Thursday, 6 p.m. Thursday, to vote in the second round of Charlotte's most missed restaurants. But it's been a great way for us to talk about not only the places that are gone, but the places that are still here. And if you miss a certain spot like Ranch House, great steakhouse out on Wilkinson Boulevard. It's given us an opportunity to talk about Beef and Bottle on South Boulevard, which I assume you've been to.
Oh my God, that's
it's
literally
one of the best places in Charlotte.
In town, absolutely, hands down.
In fact, I can't believe that we haven't both been there at the same time.
Let's make a deal right quick. When all this is done,
we celebrate at Beef and Bottle.
Me and you, we head over to Beef and Bottle. Just a real nice. We sit in the inside part, not that outside.
No, not the greenhouse.
Yeah, not the greenhouse. We sit on the inside.
Oh yeah,
booth style. Nice candlelight, couple steaks, just
big bottle of red wine.
One leader and his sidekick, just really reminiscent about how tough this time was.
I keep telling you, man, don't sell yourself short. You're not my sidekick.
Before we move on,
you're my partner in crime.
Which, by the way, you've spent far too much time on it anyway. Before we move on, I just have one question. How are you not going to put La Bibliothèque inside the 64?
They just didn't. I mean, we started with 200 restaurants that people had mentioned via Twitter or Facebook. So we had to take a lot of stuff off. A restaurant that I was the general manager of didn't even make it on there. So
I could see why. I don't know what it was, but I would assume.
Ratcliffe on the Green, phenomenal restaurant.
Yeah.
When you start with 200, you have to cut ones that you wish you could keep. Anyhow, people can check those live streams out and that bracket out.
Yeah, this is a serious podcast. This is not your joking around stuff. So let's get into business now. What do people need to know? So
it's been somewhere along the lines of 10 or 11 days since we last did an episode. We had our two representatives from the United States House, Congresswoman Alma Adams, Congressman Dan Bishop, who we'll talk a little bit about later on our last topic. We had them on to talk about what's coming down from Washington. But since then, we've been able to deploy some programs and make some decisions here at a local level. We anticipate that the state is going to be going back into session next week. We anticipate we'll be seeing something coming from Raleigh in terms of relief for people, relief for businesses. We'll certainly keep our eyes on that and discuss that as that kind of finalizes and we know what is available for folks. But we had a meeting last week. We got two meetings to talk about. So last week, the big news out of that one was a lot of logistic type things. We're really mainly discussing coronavirus related stuff. The main thing was a small business program. And as you are on the small business task force, one of three task forces the mayor created specifically around these issues. We'll talk about the other two a bit later, but I'll let you touch on the small business program that the city has deployed.
Yeah, it was part of that broader package. So I think we voted on it multiple ways, but at the end of the day, it was a broader, I think it's been 2 weeks and that feels like 2 years at this point, but it was going from memory, it was a broader $5-6 or so million package, of which the majority of it came from the CARES Act. And this is what everyone's voting on. There's also a lot more money coming from the CARES Act, but we're also getting guidance on how the next cycle of that needs to be spent, needs to be invested. So we won't talk much about that now because we're still trying to figure this out on the fly. But the last round, it went to multiple programs, including rental assistance and other things like that. But then there was a separate thing that we did. And the backdrop of it is, you may remember the county stepped out and they launched their own small business grant program. But because this is CDBG dollars, and I know we're getting a little nerdy and in the weeds right now, that comes from the federal government, community development block grants, it has very specific rules and requirements around it. One of which is it can only be deployed into these specific opportunity zone corridors. And another one of which is, we found out through this process, it can't be double dipped. So when Mecklenburg County rolled out, some might say a significant dollar-sized program, other might say, in the grand scheme of things, it's not nearly enough. They rolled it out everywhere except Charlotte because they couldn't double dip with CDBG dollars potentially where we already rolled them out. So it was on us to fill a gap potentially, and that's the storyline there of enabling. And what we did is put $1 million up for debate and discussion and vote to do essentially a grant program. I have completely put aside all my kind of challenges around like is that under normal times something my principles and from a conservative nature would say, I'm going to be against that because that's just not within my wheelhouse or realm of possibility. And I've now moved myself to a point of I'm never going to compromise my principles, but I'm looking at everything in a different way, in a different light, and to say, is this something we need right now? Because crazy times call for, unprecedented measures. So I did it. I gave it a hard look. And I just really, for a couple of reasons, didn't think it made a lot of sense. But primarily, one, we don't have the balance sheet to do an effective program, nor the expertise to roll it out. I made the analogy that it felt like we were taking a small handful of BBs and throwing them into the ocean. And it was going to feel like, to a lot of these businesses that actually got it, that they won the lottery just to be considered and receive a very small amount of money. Which leads me to my second point, which is, for the small, particularly the micro businesses, 5 employees or less, who could qualify for this. One, if you're lucky enough to win the lottery and get it, you're only getting up to 10 grand pretty much, which even for a 5, 3, 4 employee company, that's going to float you for 1 week. And we have no process, plan, or thought in mind of how we're awarding these other than kicking a can down the curb for someone who is potentially going to die and close their doors today. What's the difference between that and a week from now if there's no broader help coming in a week? So,
well, hopefully the answer is there is broader help coming, and it bears repeating something you said there towards the beginning, which is there will be dollars from Washington and potentially dollars from Raleigh that come to Charlotte, and we will be the clearinghouse for those dollars. We'll be the ones who deploy those dollars through programs that maybe we help to shape, but definitely help execute. But a lot of those will have been earmarked for specific types of businesses, specific people. There'll be certain qualifications. So it's important that folks understand that as some of these things, as you start to hear about some of the dollars that are coming from other places, oftentimes those aren't dollars that come free and clear for the city to do anything and everything they want with. We'll have to use some of the parameters that they set forward when they send those dollars. So,
and listen, Eric Cable, a frequent commenter on
everything.
I don't fall on one side or another on the vast majority of people. Like, I see things they say that I agree with. I see things that I think are dumb or whatever. Here's the point he's just making on our live stream right now, which is, how are the city and county going to pay their bills with all the lost sales tax and hospitality tax?
That is the most reasonable question I've seen Eric ask in the last 3 weeks. And so let me answer it. We are in the process of going through this year's budget. And obviously we're going to have to take a severe turn from the direction we thought we were headed. And the manager has already started that. There's been a hiring freeze. We're going to be eliminating some vacant jobs. We've made a pledge we're not going to eliminate any of our current headcount, but we've hiring freeze, eliminated some vacant jobs. There's going to be no new programs in the budget this year. We were expecting some natural growth in terms of revenue. Obviously, that's not going to be there. We're going to be short. But again, we think that there's potentially going to be dollars coming from the federal or state government that could help with some of the expenses that we're incurring in terms of response to the coronavirus. There's a lot of adjustments that the manager is going to have to make, but he's already on that. And our budget team is already trying to game out different scenarios and how short they could leave us in terms of the revenue side of our budget. But we have to have a balanced budget, which is one, it's a gift and a curse. But it means that come hell or high water, we can't spend money that doesn't come in the door. So the manager will have to figure that out with us helping. And so it will be a balanced budget. There is no other option.
Yeah. But all right. So I think you answered that well, and I agree but I would just put an asterisk and say everything there is pretty much short, if not midterm at best. Like I've been looking very closely at the long-term ramifications of what we could be dealing with. And again, it's hard to think outside of the day-to-day kind of chaos that we're in the middle of right now. But I am really, really scared for what terrible impacts that we're going to have to face down the road longer term are going to be. I think we got a very dire, not this Monday, but the one before, presentation from the manager at my and many others' request of we need to see scenario-based forecasting of what you guys could be seeing. and it looked bad. And I think it was probably rosy. I think they probably put a rosy light on it. I think we're going to have to deal in the long term with impacts that no one in this city, including in the last several crises, including 2007, 2008, where we essentially were the second largest banking hub and one of the most impacted there, have ever faced or experienced. And it's going to be way, way different when we are firing city staff, not just for those lives impact, but for the services that then we won't be able to provide to the small businesses and the residents who are also struggling in their own rights. I mean, the level of complexity in the spaghetti bowl that we're going to be dealing with of just downstream unintended impacts really frightens me.
To reiterate, in case someone jumped in there mid-comment, the city is not currently laying off any employees. There's a hiring freeze. You're saying there could come a point where if the economic impacts are dire enough, it could get to that point. We are not at that point, and we have said we will not be doing that.
Are you I mean, you're doing your normal Larken stuff of like,
well, yeah, because if someone gets on here and hears you saying we're talking about cutting staff and doesn't hear the pretext, then they're going to say, wait a minute, I thought they weren't cutting staff.
I hear you. But on the other hand, I'd say if you're jumping into conversations midstream and then taking takeaways away, then you're part of the problem. Right? I
mean, people are operating with partial information all over Facebook all day, every day. So let's make sure we give a full rounded picture.
All right. So,
but the upshot on a lot of this, and it's completely unsatisfying to any one of our constituents, anyone in the city of Charlotte. We understand that it is, but the upshot is on a lot of this stuff, we just don't know yet. And so we have to think of not only what the best case scenario is, but what the worst case scenario is. And we have to game plan for that and everything in between. And we just don't have all those answers yet. And so anyhow, one of the things that I think, and this is a maybe natural transition to talk about briefly the meeting you had yesterday. I've got two tomorrow. The mayor, we obviously have our normal committees that we've always had. Those are kind of on hiatus right now and have been temporarily replaced with 3 task forces that are specifically around issues related to the coronavirus. You are on the small business task force. It met for the first time yesterday. I'm on the airport and tourism task force, which meets tomorrow morning. I'm also on the housing task force, which meets tomorrow morning. Those are being headed by Smudgy and Julie on the small business, Ed Driggs on the airport tourism, Malcolm Graham on the housing, respectively. And
coordinated.
We've got all 3 covered. Obviously, we haven't met on my 2 yet, but we'll talk about those on the next episode. But tell us real quick what all happened yesterday. Obviously, these are all happening remotely.
Yeah, obviously. But now, here's the other thing, and I'm just going to toss this out there. No offense, whatever. But like, I just get a bit annoyed when I see specific colleagues of mine. And I mean, I'm not calling Julie out, who it was yesterday, or the mayor out, who it's been for the last couple weeks.
Sounds like you actually are.
I am actually. I am. They're doing a lot of hard work. I'm not trying at all to throw shade there, but why can't we all be remote? Like, why does somebody feel like, oh, they need to go in? I don't buy that. I don't like it. And I'll tell you, that's just
so the one yesterday, the mayor was in her office by herself, and Julie was with staff, with a small group of staff down in the basement.
Why are people going to the office?
I had that conversation with her. She said it's only the second time she set foot in that building since our meeting on March 16th. And she said she was a bit uncomfortable with it, but she also felt like, in terms of being the person who was moderating and running the meeting, that it was more logistically practical for her to be there to do that than to try to be remote.
That point. All I'm going to say is that leads me to my second annoyance of the last couple of weeks, which is we suck so bad at remote digital technology and the ability to do this. Like, this is not as hard as we're making it. It is the most brutal experience to watch a city council live streamed meeting.
Well, because everybody's jumping in the deep end and very few people have the experience that you have on a lot of this technology. And even you're learning a lot of this stuff on the fly, and we're all getting better at it.
Dude, we have a basement full of the most incredible media experts and stuff right now that literally cast our meetings every Monday night under normal circumstances. And I just feel like somehow that hasn't translated to, and this is important.
I'm liking Eric more and more. This is unexpected turn of events, but he's saying not everybody has a Mac Daddy studio like you do, Tariq. Some people are operating on old equipment.
All right,
Thank you, Eric.
I'm uncomfortable with you and Eric now
agreeing on stuff
right now. So maybe,
but also, I mean, part of the awkwardness of a digital meeting, and this has long been the case on conference calls, is they're not visual. I mean, there's not really the same kind of visual and physical cues to pick up on when people are talking. There's all this, raise your hand, put your hand down, and people never put their hand down after they ask their question, so then they come back around to them. I mean, a lot of it is just getting in habits of doing the things that help it run more smoothly. I will say,
no. My buddy,
we're going to talk about the rezoning meeting that just happened 2 nights ago here in a minute. And it went a lot better than the first 2 digital meetings we'd had.
It did not. It was terrible.
It was terrible, but it was less terrible than the others.
We might as well have been on a bridge line in a conference call because they couldn't figure out how to pull our faces up. And it just summed up by Mike, my buddy right here, who's saying, I'm actually hosting a Zoom meeting right now and still watching you all for some reason. Like
your buddy, ask Mike which of us he considers more his buddy.
I'd say it's probably me, although, yeah, I could see why you think so.
Mike, let us know. All right. So tell us, without all your complaining and whining, tell us what you actually did in the meeting yesterday. Because we're running long already.
Oh, yeah, we are. You're right. Okay, so the meeting, we brought together a bunch, 7 to be exact, city citizens, residents, leaders, thought leaders that we handpicked from the 4 council members that are on there, me, Smudgy, Julie, and Dimple. The 4 of us chose these 7 people to represent different segments, different viewpoints of the community and small business in particular. And we brought them together, and then we started with Wells Fargo chief economist, Mark Vittner, giving us a presentation of where he's seeing the data right now, both from a business, economic, and virus perspective. And then we went around the horn, and folks and leaders, including Dave Matthews, CIO at Bank of America, Sarah Balcom, the founder of Girl Tribe, what's your buddy's name? The LGBT
Chad Turner, the president of the LGBT Chamber of Commerce.
Malcolm Coley, managing partner at EY. List goes on. A lot of good people on there. And basically, we heard Mark Vittner's analysis, and then we went through that group twice to let them respond, give feedback, critique, analysis, insight from their view, from their sectors. So it was really meant to be a listening session by us, the council, not a big interaction session. And we're taking that data and that input and figuring out where to go next. I've sent that group an email where I'm trying to get to a more actionable point where I laid out, here's 5 areas that I think the city could play a role in the longer term recovery back to whatever the new normal is, as well as continued resumption of business activities.
And we'll have similar meetings tomorrow with housing and the airport and tourism when bringing people in from those sectors to
Good luck. You got a big day of masterclass WebEx ahead of you.
Well, I've got those back to back, and then a meeting with I've literally wall to wall tomorrow on conference calls and WebEx calls, so that's going to be a blast. And I've got one that you're not invited to, but you'd really like to be on.
I doubt that. I'm maxed out with meetings right now, buddy.
Team Biden. We got our weekly call tomorrow for Team Biden.
That dude is still around?
Still around. He's gonna be your president for the next 4 years.
Of what?
These United States.
Dude, I forgot that dude's still around. That's funny. That's good.
You keep sleeping. You keep sleeping on Uncle Joe and see what happens. All right. So we had a meeting this week. It was rezoning, and it was not. I hope that this sound effect you're about to use is wah wah.
Oh,
do you have that one?
Somewhere.
That's the rezoning sound effect.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to use that more often now. Go ahead.
Rezoning. So there were not a whole lot of interesting ones, but there was one really interesting one. It literally took up, and I texted you during the meeting, and I said this is what would happen. It literally took up as much time as every other petition combined. And it was the Ballantyne Reimagined Plan, which if I can, I don't know if you've been to see it very well, but this is their little image of what it could look like. And so,
what would you guess my biggest shocker moment, takeaway, drama topic was of that unexpected moment? What would you say?
Unexpected?
I wasn't. Maybe you were expecting it. I wasn't.
I don't know. I don't know what you weren't expecting. To me, it was somewhat predictable.
Elise Dashu.
Oh, yeah.
Chairwoman of CMS Board of Education to come out.
Yes.
One, to come out. Two, to come out so vocally and powerfully against.
Well, not necessarily against the project per se.
Yeah.
I mean, and frankly, the people that are pushing back on this project are pushing back on pieces of it. I think there's general agreement that what they're proposing would be a vast improvement. I mean, we're talking about a large bunch of parcels that have all been kind of gathered together here, one of which is the golf course. Redeveloping all that mixed use, tons of residential, tons of office and retail, and it looks at the future of connecting the blue line that would come by like Carolina Place Mall and to the Ballantyne site. It connects a bunch of roads and improves the street grid down there. There's a huge open space parks, amphitheater, a lot of public use and public amenities. There's a lot to like about this project. And I think to a person, everyone would agree with that. There are a couple of things around the edges that people are concerned about. And your point is that Elise Dashu, chair of the CMS school board, talked about that we are at a crisis point in terms of overcrowding with schools in certain areas, and that area being one of them, and that we can't allow how common school overcrowding is in our community to make us numb to it.
I totally agree. And I agree with the sentiments and all that. I kind of fell out a little bit where I think Braxton was going, which was like, we've been saying this for the 3 years or so we've been around, and like we've reached out multiple times. Like this is not the first time that this phenomenon of like, what do we even do with this? Every rezoning almost shows an overcapacity school and an impossible situation we're putting them in, and no one ever has actual comments or feedback for us.
And it's not like there's some part of town where there's a hugely undersubscribed school that you go, well, why don't you guys just develop in Northwest Charlotte or just develop in Southwest Charlotte? Everywhere is oversubscribed, almost everywhere. And the ones that aren't are pushing right up against that line. So
what do you do though with that? Like,
I don't know.
What we heard, it's so large, it almost feels like it's not like let's troubleshoot this over the next 30 days. It feels like it's an ultimatum of like, you either buy into this and you can't do it for years until we figure it out, if we do it all, or you're just going to disregard it. I mean, am I misinterpreting that?
No, I mean, I think that the calculation that has to be made is, does something of this scale generate enough of a shot in the arm in terms of tax revenue that you could justify it on the basis that it seeds money indirectly into the budget of the school system to allow them to build schools to relieve the pressure? I don't know. I mean, and I don't know, admittedly, I don't know enough about the building schedule that CMS has anyway to know where they're going to build that in that relief over the next 1 to 5 years.
That's the point though, right? That's the thing that we've been talking about with them, which is like, somehow if we want to be proactive and not responsive on a case by case, petition by petition basis of overcrowding at schools, and that's the reason why you shouldn't support this or not, we need something where we're overlaying, here's where the school capital investment is going.
And so it needs to, and we don't ever see that. It should say, like, there's a new West Charlotte High School being built. It should say, while schools are currently over capacity, you know, the high school is currently over capacity, there is a new West Charlotte High School being built in the year 20 whatever, that we anticipate will relieve that pressure, and it will, you know, whatever. We need to be, to your point, kind of fitting hand in glove the school building schedule in with the when is this project going to be completed, and actually calls that burden on the school system, and when will the new schools that are scheduled be completed and relieve that pressure, and how do those two things sync up? We don't see that right now. So I don't know. I mean, that is and that is not
how are you going to vote?
I mean, I love the project. Well, there's a couple of things. And so I think, one, we are making a land use decision. And I think that the school question fairly weighs into people's thought process on the land use question. The other thing that came up was that folks there is a amount of, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but there's an amount of 80% AMI and 60% AMI affordable units in this development. There are folks who want to see more. We cannot compel a petitioner to do a certain amount of affordable housing and make our land use decision, our rezoning decision, contingent on that affordable housing.
Yep.
However, they are coming to us and looking for grants to help with some of the infrastructure improvements that are needed down there. And so some of those grants, those are the areas where we could say, if you guys want support from the city on some of the infrastructure stuff, here's the things we'd like to get from you. That's an appropriate conversation. From a land use perspective, I think that if we can get comfortable with this schools question, I'm certainly favorable to the project as a land use decision. What was that?
Did you hear that?
Yes.
Oh, I was looking at something else. Sorry. I didn't know you'd be able to hear that. My bad.
I thought it sounded like a sound effect, but I didn't see you touch your sound effect pad. So
I was looking at something else. I apologize. Yeah. I was multitasking.
Well, I'm just glad it wasn't something inappropriate.
But whatever you said, I totally agree with and believe in. I just want
Well, good. I said we're going to triple taxes.
Oh, yeah.
To pay for all these schools. So anyway, I am favorable to this project. I hope that we can work with the petitioner to get more affordability out of it. I hope that we can come to some sort of a comfortable resolution on the schools thing. But that is not just about this project. That's every project that we approve. And so we really do have to come up with a better holistic and intergovernmental strategy with the school system to say, how should we be evaluating these? How should you be evaluating these? And how can we team up to know where the growth patterns are and where that relief is going to be needed in the school system, and make sure that that's scheduled in as you do school bonds. So I don't know enough about schools to even know where to start that conversation, but there are people who do. We have a good relationship with Ernest Winston. We have a good relationship with multiple school board members. We had Margaret Marshall a couple weeks ago. It's not like we're not talking, but I don't think that our staffs are hand in hand enough on those issues and the long range planning.
Elise was coming to speak
before the meeting, but not well in advance.
All the signups, essentially.
Yeah, not well in advance of the meeting.
I was very surprised with that, but so forecast it for me.
Yes, Becca, those questions have already been asked on overcrowding of schools. That will definitely factor into the decision-making process. The questions have been asked, and we're starting to get some answers now.
How do you think this plays out over the next month? How do you think the vote goes?
I think depending on what kind of answers we get on the school stuff, I could see it being delayed a month potentially. It's just a lot of stuff to chew on.
What's going to happen in 1 month is my question. I mean, these are. Maybe I'm wrong. Actually, now that I think about it, here's what I think could happen. Right? I think that if it's a question of on the CMS side, reprioritizing or understanding where things are and making a stretch yet reasonable ask of the petitioner, because this is of a scale that is nearly like, we're talking about a rezoning and then things after that, they said to us, equivalent to the size of Uptown, larger than that of South Park. I mean, this is not a building or a corner or a block. Right?
Yeah, this is a community.
It's exciting. It's big, but they could come back with a stretch yet reasonable, achievable ask for schools to say, hey, like, we don't want to let this be another case of macro overcrowding of schools in that area. We need these tax dollars to, I don't even know, like somebody smarter than us on the school side, to your point, needs to say it, but like, can you agree to that? And that should be achievable in 30 days if it's a reasonable ask.
And Jennifer De La Hara has commented there that the information is out there, and absolutely, Jennifer, we're not trying to say that the school system is not transparent with that information. We're saying that we've got to get our staffs, and we've got to do it too, but frankly, the staffs have to be better coordinated in making sure that the information that you've got out there and the information that we've got out there are put head to head and put up next to each other so that we can analyze them in tandem. Because right now, I think you guys know what you're doing and the information's out there. We know what we're doing and the information's out there, but we're not really strategizing together. Or if we are, it doesn't feel that way to us.
And I see her comment right here. I don't think that we need to go to the level of like you bringing us in on the capital planning strategy sessions any more than we need to bring you in to every rezoning meeting. But I think we've got to find a better touch point, which is like, if we hear from the chair of your board that this is something that is is out of reason and it's too painful, what is it beyond? How does it map up with where that construction spend, that capital spend is now? And like, what's the ask? Because I didn't walk away from there fully comprehending what the 30-day ask was. Was it just like, it's impossible, vote no? Or was it, we can come to some kind of change or tweak that then provides additional capital into that plan?
And it probably needs to become more common that we are getting a higher level or a greater amount of feedback from CMS on some of these larger rezonings, because that was unusual. I'm glad that she was there to make that point, because it might not have been something that was top of mind. It's part of the information that we're given on any school rezoning, but I think she's right. I think to some degree we've become numb to the fact that, well, yeah, schools are overcrowded. Schools are overcrowded in every part of our community. So, what are we going to do? So I just think we have to have a higher level conversation and make sure that we've got systems in place where our staffs are working together so that we have a better analysis of the impact that we're having with our land use decisions and vice versa.
I'm not deaf nor numb to the points that have been brought up. I think there are two valid ones, right? One of which is school infrastructure, school capacity, and this is a game-changing, exciting project, but it's going to have impacts there. And I think the second one, which I thought was going to be the main topic, but it was kind of a secondary topic, was the affordable housing element. And is there enough affordability in it? All I know is that if I was to read the tea leaves and where I think this is going, I think over the next 30 days or 25 days, I don't know how long it's been since we met, I think that this is tracking towards probably an approval, right? Because if we're presented with two options in 1 month, where one is don't do it because we need to overhaul the way we connect to the school board, connect to all these things and do it, and it's not going to be solved for a while, I think then probably the people that are in that middle of the pack that could go either way say, that's not acceptable to me. But if we go to that point and say, here are some incremental asks, incremental improvements to the affordability component, incremental improvements to how capital will ultimately flow and arm the school board with the ability then, and the county as well, the ability to invest in the schools to make sure capacity doesn't keep doing what it does all over town, which is just get blown through and put so many folks in a strained environment. Then I think that's something where we could either say, yeah, we're on board, we approve, or you know what, this is tracking in the right direction. Let's delay it for another 30 days and let that happen. That's how I'd handicap this whole thing. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could be the impetus for some systemic changes in how we look at these things. I don't know that is possible before the decision is going to be made. Carolyn's asking, how do we commit grant dollars to a project not knowing what the projected outlook is for negative tax dollars moving forward with all that's going on? This is not, when we're talking about like these tax increment grants, and we're going to get too far into the weeds because we want to talk about the reopen and see stuff, and then we want to wrap. But and that's wrap with a W, not RAP. I shouldn't have said that because now you're going to feel compelled to do something. No, you shouldn't. This is not the city writing a check to the folks who are doing the Ballantyne Reimagine project. This would be essentially the money would be coming back to them from the taxes that this project would generate. So it's not us opening our checkbook. So they're only getting a break on the taxes they generate, essentially. Is there a better 10-second way to explain that, Tariq? But it's not money that we're having to depend on taking in to give to them.
That's
it's
right.
Revenue. Yeah.
At this phase, that's right. But there's an opportunity cost to it. There's a ROI for giving essentially the inverted rebate that this is. So while it's not in the way Carolyn kind of framed it there still are things to think through. And there's probably other elements of this in steps to come after a rezoning step, just given the magnitude of it.
But essentially it's money back to them that would not have been generated but for this development.
Yes.
So there's not really an opportunity cost on the city's part.
You said your favorite phrase.
But for.
I was having
all right.
a while.
You got some buzz yesterday from your conversation on the FinTech Mosh Pit with our friend Mr. Marino from Old Mecklenburg Brewing. It was obviously a big news story yesterday too that the Reopen NC protest down in Raleigh, where very few people were wearing masks and they were certainly not socially distancing. And our guest from the last episode, Representative Dan Bishop, decided that he'd politicize this a little bit more, and he rolled on down to Raleigh and I guess use this as a campaign issue, which also I'll point out, Cynthia Wallace, his Democratic opponent, is happy to do as well. She's already sent out a couple of emails pointing out the absurdities of his little field trip yesterday. But you talked with John about the fact that when we quote unquote reopen, it's not going to be like we wait until we can get to a point to flip a switch and things are just back to the way they were. It's going to have to be whatever it is, however it is, it's going to have to be stair-stepped. It's going to have to be gradual. And that there is some point, and I don't know where it is, but there is some point where there are going to be people and businesses that just start to fall away.
It's already happening. It's already happening.
But I mean, even more en masse. And there was never going to be a point in the next 6 months where it's going to be entirely safe for everyone to go out and pretend like nothing ever happened here. So we do have to figure out where this kind of dimmer switch approach, when it starts and how quickly you turn the lights back on. And you had that conversation yesterday. I haven't had a chance to listen to it, but what were John's thoughts as a large business owner in this community? And not only a business owner of a brick and mortar place, but someone who distributes his product to a bunch of other places and relies on a lot of different pieces of the economy to make a living and support all the jobs he has there.
And he's organically grown into what I think we would classify as a mid-sized business in Charlotte at this point, but he's got a small business mindset. I mean, he's like, he came from I'm sure to say the bottom and now he's here, but you understand what I'm saying. Like he started small.
Like Drake.
Yeah, he's like Drake. Exactly. He's got that mindset. But I read a post of his and it resonated with me in a way where, and listen, I called several people before I did that episode yesterday because I didn't want to be viewed as politicizing something. I also didn't want to be viewed as capitalizing on something where inadvertently I'm further dividing both sides of this debate, because I want people to come towards the center here and see business logic, yet safety and saving lives hand in hand, in that we can achieve both if we start innovating and thinking nimbly on that front and go back to business, right? So I took it very seriously in trying to figure out exactly how to frame all that. And then when I saw John Marino's post of like, hey, I'm trying to just do my best here. And why is it, as we're now X days into this, that I can't, in my acre and a half of Old Mecklenburg Brewery that I'm responsible for, get some guidance from you guys and put protocols in place? Not even guidance, like mandates. He's like, tell me what to do. I'll do it to remain safe.
Because there's going to be recommendations in place for maybe the next year, but I'm saying recommendations that people just practice, better hygiene, that they practice social distancing when they can. If you're older, you're more vulnerable, that you be really mindful. I mean, we're going to have to be thinking about some of those type of things for much longer than the time that we're, in a stay-at-home order. But to your point, we can open with rules in place that are not recommendations, but are absolute non-negotiables, and say, these are the things if you want to start seating people on your patio again, if you want to start serving alcohol again, if you want to start using your dining room, you can only be at a quarter of your capacity. You can only have people, whatever it is, how far apart they have to be, how many people it can be, what your practices of serving have to be, or a retail outlet, obviously. We talk a lot about the bars and restaurants, but there's so many businesses that are going to have to figure out, how can we operate and operate safely when we're allowed to do so again? And it's not just going to be the way it was 6 months ago all of a sudden.
I think it's, and even since that conversation, I've had several others, and it's helping me evolve the way I describe what's in my head with this right now, which is the point you just made. We're entering into a new normal, and that new normal isn't a week or a month. It's going to be for years to come. So, and that new normal is going to be a mix of the old way and the way we've been in the last month. It's not going to be the same. And we have to transition now, right away, from batten down the hatches and let's survive this storm and go back to the way it was, to in the new normal. And I believe that's as easy as possible as I can describe it. Is the difference is right now we're at essential versus non-essential businesses, activities, workers, whatever topics, right? We need to go from that over to safe versus unsafe practices, environments, whatever that is that it falls into. And I think that will then prepare us for the new normal, where someone like a John Marino sitting there and he's saying, all right, tell me the guidance for restaurants, bars, and breweries and cideries, where what are the expectations of me when people arrive? How do they arrive safely and get to where their end place is they're going in my establishment? What does it need to be like then? Do they need a mask? Can they drink with the mask on or no? How do they pay and not hand cash over and sign a receipt? How do they then leave safely and get back in it? So it doesn't.
What just occurred to me? There's an opportunity for you here with the FinTech Hub, I think.
We're all over it, bro.
Yeah. I mean, from a payments perspective, and maybe it's Passport, maybe it's, we've got so many payment companies in the Avid Exchange. There's got to be, and I know it already exists, but there's got to be a way for even a mom and pop restaurant to be able to quickly and easily adopt touchless payments.
There are so many ways to do that. This is like old news in the fintech world. However, what's old news as a capability in the fintech world doesn't mean it's at mass adoption.
Right.
You've got to have
mass, especially for your small places that that maybe have one of the old just little credit card swipers that they have beside the old school cash register. I mean, but that's a big thing. I got pickup food or takeout food today for lunch, and I was in my car. They came to my car, which was good, and they accidentally brought me the wrong receipt. I didn't realize it until after I'd signed it. So then they had to go in, they had to use my card again. They brought me out another receipt with a different pen. I could tell because it was a different color. So now I'm touching two different pens. It's like, thankfully I had hand sanitizer in the car and all that. But if there had been a way, if she'd have said, hey, if you go onto our website and click here, you can pay and leave the tip on the website through this app, whatever. And I could have done that. That would have been so many less touch points between me and that person and whoever else was working inside in that restaurant.
This wasn't the right way, but we went for my anniversary last week and I picked up curbside from Good Food on Montford, one of the
delicious place
restaurants that should have been in your competition last week.
Except that they're not closed.
I understand, dude.
It's only for closed restaurants.
For the last week towards you? Oh, you're so slow.
Your jokes have to be funny for anyone to understand them as jokes.
We paid online because we anticipated that. Lady came out, dropped in the passenger seat, and she had it. And I was like, and we kind of froze. And she was like, you want me to sign it for you? And I was like, yeah, sure. So what's the tip? So she wrote the tip and signed it for me. Now, that protocol probably isn't good.
So you couldn't tip online, but you could pay?
We just gave the card and they manually entered the card into the thing. The whole point.
Either way, there's room for improvement here.
Way room for improvement. And the market is now in a different place for it. So
I think that could be a big piece of it, because if you can have, there's already things, if you go to the Hornets game, you can order your next beer on your phone. You download the Hornets app.
Oh, God.
And
the technology is light years beyond where we need it. It's just mass
adoption. And so I think, if there's an opportunity to go to OMB and order your next beer from your phone and then they set it on a table or whatever, and you walk over and pick it up. And then for you to pay on your phone. I mean, there's so many ways that you can make those sort of interactions and transactions safer. And I think some of the big businesses, and frankly, the sad part is that a lot of the big corporations, a lot of the big national chains will probably be able to adopt that much more easily and quickly. And the mom and pop restaurants that are the ones who are in such dire straits, it's going to be that much more of a burden for them to do it. So I think there's an opportunity, and I don't know a shred of this compared to what you and a lot of your folks with the FinTech Hub know, but there's got to be an opportunity to have like a crash course for independently owned merchants, be they bars, restaurants, clothing stores, whatever,
We
and
are
say,
all
here are the top 5, technologies that you can utilize to make your customers feel more comfortable in your place of business and lessen the chance that that you have a bad experience or that something goes wrong.
We are all over that, my friend. So to close that out, I would just say this, right? I jacked the volume up. Sorry about that. I would just say this. I understand what the people on the reopen NC kind of side are trying to do. When I think about, I'm actually, in fairness, what I might say is, when I think about the outcome on one side of it that we're trying to achieve, I think it's going to further polarize the people we need to kind of step up and make a tough leadership decision right now if they see people gathering in person. Now, someone else argued to me earlier this week, well, if they hadn't done that, it may have not put the pressure on the people that when they come towards the middle with that more palatable option, that they'll go for it versus not having that pressure. I don't know what the right answer is. All I know is I'm going to play my role, which is use the small business logic, and we can balance safety with reopening and just really use a really logical view of like, it's business as usual that we're about to enter in a new normal. And we can't operate like we're weathering a storm.
Well, I wouldn't use the phrase business as usual, but I do think when somebody like you can come in and say, okay, here are the places that you'd be most concerned about there being a spread of the virus. And here is ways we can use technology or new ideas to lessen those risk factors or risk points. Then I think people can start to say, okay, that makes sense. I can see how I could go to OMB, particularly in weather where I can sit outside in their huge outdoor space. I can see how I could do that safely. And so I think it's giving people the scenarios and giving people the understanding of what new ideas and what new technologies can be utilized to make that experience safer, that will make them accept a phasing back in of a lot of these merchants and their businesses. So just screaming and holding signs in Raleigh, I don't think it does. It just pushes people further out to their respective camps.
I was there. I was 100% of that mindset until that person I talked to.
You might want to specify that you were not there in Raleigh. You were at the place where I'm talking about.
In case someone just joined midstream. Yes, I was not physically there. I was of that mindset. And when I saw it, and I was kind of like, I know what they're fighting for. It's a noble cause. This is ill-informed. And then I truly felt that. And then when I had this conversation with this person and said that, they were like, but don't you think that applies the pressure that then allows someone like you in the middle, then to not in the middle of the aisle, but in the middle of the debate, bringing an alternative that makes business sense, that makes them more open to that. And I said, dang, I don't know.
I think reasonable pressure moves people. I don't think that irrational anger moves people. I think it makes people dig their heels in more. I can promise you Mandy Cohen don't give a damn about the Reopen NC movement. Roy Cooper, those people all dislike him anyway. I mean, what difference does it make to him? I think that when reasonable people come to the table with intelligent solutions, which is what we're talking about right now, I think that can make people go, okay, there is a middle path here.
But, and I agree, in a perfect world, that makes sense. But think about the world that we exist in. Do we pay more attention to a super loud, packed chamber of people for a rezoning against it?
If they're all people that aren't going to vote for me anyway, and they're saying things that I don't think are reasonable arguments, then no.
Not you, the body itself, the city council as a whole.
There are a small few.
How many stupid arguments have we heard that were irrelevant by three people that just their point had no bearing on the decision, yet it made us approach it differently? I mean, there's a point there.
It might have moved the needle on 2 or 3 council members. To me, though, if there's a room full of folks who have openly stated they don't like me, no one at that rally yesterday voted for Roy Cooper in 2016. And that doesn't mean he doesn't still represent them. But for them, it's not politically motivating to him. Someone coming and saying, Governor, there is a way for us to still be safe in terms of public health and also help some of these businesses get back on their feet and help our economy start to warm back up. You present him with that option, that's going to be appealing to him. But people just screaming, reopen our state, and not having any sort of a plan, and ironically, even though I don't think they appreciate the irony, saying it's my body, my choice, which might have come from a different movement that they don't agree with. There's a whole lot of irony that I don't think was appreciated yesterday. Things like that, things like, a lot of those folks, I would say, probably frequently use the phrase, if only they'd followed the law, then maybe that wouldn't have happened. So I guess
all
that
I'm
doesn't.
saying, and there's an argument about constitutionality and all this stuff, but all I'm saying is that I was of that mindset where if I looked at it even from my vantage point and said, that's dumb. And then I heard that argument and I said, I'm not positive that it doesn't, but I think it can be best summed up by our friend Sam Spencer and his hashtags, hashtag stop Larken, hashtag reopen Charlotte, hashtag MAGA, hashtag Team Tariq. And I know Sam Spencer believes.
Speaking of sarcasm that's not appreciated. All right. Well, the stay-at-home order at the county was extended to align with the states. It is through, I believe, April 29th. Is that right? And so that would be a week from today. That's next Wednesday. So some decision either from Gibby Harris at the county or from Mandy Cohen and the governor at the state level will have to be made in the next 7 days. So we will eagerly await that. As we mentioned, I believe it's Tuesday, 6 days from now, that the North Carolina General Assembly, the State House and State Senate go back into session. We expect some news out of there.
We might need to talk to our guy, Jason Sane. We might need to talk to Tim Moore, some folks to see what's going on.
So a lot will be happening in the next 7 days, and we will be back to talk to you about it. We've also got a business meeting on Monday, so we will come back to you sometime midweek next week to give you updates on all that. Any final thoughts, Tariq? Everybody stay safe.
Can I show you something really quick and plug it? Do you mind? Take a look at this. You remember, have you heard that I've been, launching a lot of very important things lately. YTAC, have you heard of that?
No.
What? You haven't heard of YTAC?
Well,
My esports to STEM program for CMS seniors?
Oh, well, yes, but I didn't know that's what it was called.
I would expect you to be paying a little closer attention. Well,
this show has always explained its acronyms.
YTAC is the Youth Technology Apprenticeship Camp. I worked with
Sounds awesome.
ELC, Bank of America, CMS, the City of Charlotte to launch it. We're in the end of day 3, and let me just show you an image. These kids are, most of them, not going to a 4-year college or debating it, and they come from a variety of different schools. Check this out. They're playing Rocket League this week. Here's the lineup. You can see the schools, Independence, West Meck, Olympic, Garinger, Vance. It's a great group. And today
you said these are juniors,
seniors, graduating seniors, that their whole lives have been disrupted. All those rites of passage that they have been disrupted in going to prom and going to all their physical graduations and stuff. But these 20, not only are they learning to code all afternoon in their instruction period, but from 10:30 to noon every morning, they get into competition mode where the high schools play each other. Tomorrow, I might even be able to show you the lineup for tomorrow. No, I can't. But they are playing each other in a tournament. They started a little today, tomorrow, and then goes into Friday, where one school will be crowned champion of this week's game, which is Rocket League. I think the odds-on favorite is Independence right now. They're crushing. But anything could happen. They're practicing. And then we go into League of Legends, Valorant, and Call of Duty. It's going to be amazing, man.
They're going to be the ones who invent this technology that helps us figure out how we can have a safer business world.
Fact. All right. That's all.
Very cool. All right. So that is episode 98. We are getting dangerously close to episode 100, and it's clearly going to have to be remote.
I had an idea the other day.
What's that?
We skip 100. We just go to 101, 102, 103, whenever. And then we come back and do 100 in person live when all of this is, that could be years from now. But I'm just saying, let's have a sentimental pause there and not do 100 like that.
Maybe for 100, we could do like a best of, kind of look back at some of our funniest moments.
Oh,
I hope that's coming through more clearly than it is in my headphones to the listening audience. Anyway, we'll figure it out. But everybody stay safe. Support your local restaurants. Do whatever you can do to help the businesses you care about in your community right now, and look out for each other. We love you guys. Share, like, rate, whatever else you can do with the podcast. And we'll talk to you next week.
we're out.